What's up, guys? The streak continues. I think I've won maybe 3 days in a row again at this point, but I've won 11 out of the last 13 days, and I think the only two losses might have been days where I had one play, so it's like pretty easy to take a loss on a day where you only have one play. You just happen to lose that one play. I've been hot, I'm not going to lie. It's been pretty good. Yesterday looked like it was going to be a certain loss with the night slate there, but it wound up getting there because of the underdog moneyline cashes that happened. Illinois State being one of them. It was a nice afternoon. They had an easy upset win as a nice underdog against Long Beach State. Illinois State was just winning the whole game. At one point, I think they were up to almost a 20-point lead in that game. Pretty much wire to wire, just easy win and cover there. Gotta love to see that. Night slate did not do as well. Edmonton Oilers, I think the game statistically played close enough, and they played well enough that it was worth like the underdog play. I don't think it was necessarily like the wrong move to make there. They started out, they had a 2-0 lead in that game, and then they, of course, gave away the lead almost immediately. Then they took a 3-2 lead on, I think McDavid scored on a penalty shot. They were up 3-2. Then they didn't score again, and they wound up losing the game 5-3. Just kind of tough way to take that loss when it looks good early on. Edmonton, as I keep saying, they can certainly score goals, but they can't stop their opponents from scoring goals. So that's kind of the issue there. And then Nashville, maybe I got a bit lucky on that one. That was another game where if you're on a fairly substantial underdog price like I was on Nashville, and the game is close pretty much the whole way, you're in that game, and it tells you it's the right side, really, that you have value on that underdog. If they're losing by one goal late into the game, that's kind of value there. And statistically, it was a fairly close game as well. And, of course, I got a little bit lucky. Nashville, they scored 2 goals in the final minute in like a 14-second period there, which was crazy, but that did it. They flipped a 3-2 deficit into a 4-3 win in the final minute of regulation. I'll take it. I definitely enjoy it. I love it. And the basketball game did not get there. The Knicks were certainly in that game for the entire first half, and then they had one of the worst third quarters maybe that I've ever seen. I don't know what the deal was there. I don't know what happened there. They took way more field goal attempts than, were they even playing Minnesota? I don't even remember. They took way more field goal attempts than they did. They had more rebounds. Like, statistically, it looked like the Knicks should have at least been in that game enough to probably cover it as an underdog, but that was not the case. It was just really lopsided third quarter that happened there, shooting-wise and otherwise. Just not good. And in the NFL game, I did not have a bet on that game, but I gave out an opinion on it, but I do think that the Chiefs should have won that game. Philadelphia they were held to under 250 yards, total yards in the game. The Chiefs out-yarded them by like 100 yards. Chiefs were winning for most of the game. They didn't trail until very late in the game with that final touchdown, and the sequence that led up to that touchdown was just kind of ridiculous. Really, the Chiefs didn't score at all in the entire second half, which is kind of insane. It looked like they were about to, after their 17-7 lead had become a 17-14 lead. They got down into the red zone, and what do? They have like the most inopportune fumble that you can possibly have, fumble it over in the red zone, and then it was like a couple plays later, the Eagles get the longest play of the game on like a 40-something yard pass to Brown to get down to the 1. And then obviously, because they're the Eagles, they're going to run Hurts into the end zone and do that stupid move where they pile on his back and shove him into the end zone. So that's what they did. So it was a sequence of like 3 plays basically or 2 plays really that were just crazy, almost fluke plays. Fumble on the part of Kansas City when they were about to score, leading to then, a few plays later, that longest pass play of the game for the Eagles, which was just insane. I think Kansas City should have won the game, as I said. What can you do about that? If Kansas City backers in that game, I think, got a bit screwed. I don't know what else there is to say about that. Is there anything? I was going to say one other thing about it, but I don't even remember what else I was going to say about it. But I think that's pretty much it. It was really a lot of fluky shit. Oh, the other thing I was going to say is that Kansas City had a lot of dropped passes as well. including down the stretch. You had like Kelsey dropping like a short pass on an out route, although he wouldn't have gained that many. He would have gotten a first down, actually, so I guess it would have mattered to some extent. Then you had that, as everybody saw, the pass that looked like it was a short touchdown to who the hell was the I forget who it was. One of the wide receivers on Kansas City had the entire defense beat, and the throw was there, and he just dropped it. It was a rainy night, but I don't know if you can excuse it. He had the touchdown, basically, that would have won the game for the Chiefs pretty much right near the end in the final minute. No, couldn't haul it in, dropped it. He was ahead of the defender who was on him, but could not convert on that. And then on the fourth down play, the throw was there too. And whoever the receiver was on that one could have had it, even though he was in traffic, and he didn't catch it either. Kansas City's just known for drop passes. They have the most in the NFL this year, I think, and a lot of it was Tony early in the season, even in that first game against Detroit. But yeah, what can you do? I'm a little bit mad just because I lost the pick in my pools on Kansas City there. We move on to today. Let's look at this slate here. This is a college basketball slate, a pretty big one, but I'm not going to have much to say about it. I mean, it's kind of similar to yesterday. You have all these tournaments going on. The one thing I will say is I think UCLA is in a bad spot, but I don't know that I want to take 28 points with a mismatched underdog here. I usually don't in college basketball, but they're the team that I think is in like the worst spot, one of the worst spots that I can see on the slate here. UCLA played a really tough game against Marquette, and I think UCLA might have not even been ranked or been low in the rankings going into that game. Marquette is ranked 4th in the country, which I think they're a little bit overrated. Being 4th, they're certainly a really good team, but I don't think they're quite that good. But UCLA had them on the ropes. UCLA was winning the game for a large portion of that game, and then it was close down the stretch, and they wound up losing that game close. And now they face Chaminade, which Chaminade is a team. This is the Maui Invitational. I think they're a Division II team, but they host the Maui Invitational or something in Honolulu. Is it in Honolulu? Yeah, it's in Honolulu, even though it's the Maui Invitational, and then Honolulu is on Oahu, if I remember correctly, if I have my geography correct. So I don't know what's up with the name of it or whatever, but I think Chaminade is in Honolulu, and they're like a Division II team, but this is like the annual thing. They host this tournament or whatever, so they get to play in the tournament, even though they're a mismatched underdog. They have pulled off a couple upsets over the years in this tournament. I would only look to take the huge number, 28 points with Chaminade, if I was going to play that game here. And that's kind of the only thing that I saw. I just saw UCLA was not in the best spot, so I'd kind of look to go that way. And Chaminade didn't play well in their previous game in that tournament. They're getting blown out by Kansas, but that was also a complete mismatch. But I'm afraid that UCLA might be able to just dictate the score here, so that's why I kind of don't want to do it. But college basketball, yeah, I'm being very selective early in the season, as I usually am. So I'm not going to have any plays there. I just figured I'd mention that. In college football, Maction, no surprise I'm not going to be on this Maction here, but I do have one lean in the, well, actually, it's the earlier of the two games, so fuck it, I'll just talk about it first. Bowling Green against Western Michigan, and if you know how I handicap, I think you'll probably know where I lean in this one, but it looks to be going against where the market is indicating right now. Bowling Green has gone up from a pick'em to a 1.5 point road favorite at Western Michigan. They got 84% of the cash, but 51% of the tickets. So it looks like there's cash on Bowling Green moving them up. And I don't know if this is just a numbers play or something, a money line play that's going on there, because I will tell you, the situation is not a situation where I'd want to play Bowling Green at all. I think it's a pretty bad situation for them. So Bowling Green, as I had mentioned last week, I had them as a pretty strong lean that I mentioned, and I wish I bet it. They were hosting Toledo in their home finale last week, and they were winning the game 28-10 in the second half, and they wound up letting the whole thing slip and losing by 1 point to Toledo, which it basically came down to Toledo, I think, converting a 2-point conversion on one of their late touchdowns there. Not good for Bowling Green, but that was Bowling Green's like big game of the season, basically, kind of. They had already become bowl eligible, which is another factor coming into this game here. That was their big game, their home finale there. They had Toledo, the team that's leading the MAC West, leading the MAC, really, coming into their house. They had them on the ropes and they almost pulled off the double-digit upset and let it slip right near the end. So if you're Bowling Green, you're coming off that game, such a huge game, almost pulling off the upset in your home finale against Toledo, your senior night. You're bowl eligible already. You're going to a bowl, and now you have a road game against Western Michigan. Is that really a game where you're going to be focused? I would say no. You're probably not going to be in Western Michigan. They're out of it. They're not bowl eligible because they lost their game last week against Northern Illinois, which I'd mentioned the market was indicating on Northern Illinois. But not only that, but they got shut out by Northern Illinois. So I think this is a spot where Western Michigan is more likely to have more motivation than Bowling Green here. Like I said, Bowling Green's coming off that gigantic game where they almost upset Toledo. They're already in a bowl. I don't think they really have much of anything to play for at this point. Who cares about Western Michigan, really? Western Michigan, they're going to miss the bowl season basically by 1 game or 2 games here. They have 4 wins, 4-7. They can't make a bowl. This is their home finale here, their senior night. They have Bowling Green coming in, who's a team that is bowl eligible and has a better record than they do. I think they're going to want to show up for it. That's my opinion. They're the team that has any reason to be motivated in this game. This is the final game of the season for them. Not going to a bowl. They want to send the seniors off in style. What better way to do that than to get a win in your senior night in kind of an isolated game that's going to be on ESPNU, on national TV? That's the way I look there. Western Michigan, I think Bowling Green has nothing to play for in that game, and Western Michigan at least has their home finale and senior night to play for in their last game because they're not going to a bowl, so they might treat this like their bowl game. So that's the way I look there. The other game I have less of an opinion on with Eastern Michigan at Buffalo. Buffalo's down from a 7-point favorite to a 5.5-point favorite at home. Looks like 77% of the cash and tickets are on Eastern Michigan, who I guess is a public road underdog to some extent here, where it might be just the fact that people look at this game and they see both of these teams have bad records, but Eastern Michigan actually has the better record at 5-6 overall than Buffalo has 3-8 overall. But I think factoring into that is that Buffalo has had a more difficult schedule than Eastern Michigan. So I would probably lean a little bit to Buffalo there just because, the line looks a bit sus when you have a team as like almost a touchdown favorite at home and they have the worst overall record, even though they have the same record in conference. Buffalo, if you look at their out-of-conference schedule, they played Liberty, they played Louisiana, who's not a bad team, they played Wisconsin, so they played a much tougher out-of-conference schedule than Eastern Michigan, who Eastern Michigan's toughest out-of-conference game, I guess, was Minnesota, who's fine. They're a Big Ten team, but not as intense as what Buffalo played. So I think that is pretty much the reason why the overall record discrepancy is there. Eastern Michigan, however, is sitting at 5-6, so they can get bowl eligible if they win this game. So that's the one problem that I have here, kind of a big problem there. And Buffalo cannot make a bowl, so this is going to be their final game, but it is their final home game. It's senior night for them. Buffalo, this is their last game, of course, so they have something to play for, although it might be Eastern Michigan's last game too. They're playing for bowl eligibility, but what I think here is that maybe the public knows that that's the case, and they might see Eastern Michigan as the team with the better record getting all those points and think they needed this win to become bowl eligible. Like, they're going to go all out and try to win this game, which to some extent is true, but the line just looks very suspicious to me there. So I wouldn't be able to get there with Eastern Michigan, even though they are playing for bowl eligibility there. Buffalo is still playing for pride on senior night there and may treat it as such, and they are the better team, as the line is telling you. So there are some conflicting ways to look at that game there. And what else we got? I'm going to have one play. I didn't mention that. One play in the NBA here. NHL, there is no card today. So I guess we'll just go right to the NBA and be done with it here. NHL, there are going to be some games, a full slate tomorrow. I'm gonna have to look at that tonight. And I'm going to do my football videos at some point, I guess tomorrow as well, which is going to get a little wild. Let's go to the NBA where I have one play, even though it looks like it's going against some of the market indicators here. Do I have anything to say on these other games? I do think the Trailblazers are the way to lean again in the NBA, but do I really want to take the Portland Trailblazers after what they did to me the other night? Well, that kind of factors into it a little bit. But with the Trailblazers, they're at Phoenix. Phoenix is down from 13.5 to 13. Huge home favorite. Phoenix has 57% of the tickets, but 56% of the cash is on the Portland Trailblazers. So it looks like the Blazers are getting some of the money there at least. The situation there, like I alluded to, the Blazers are coming off losing that game where I thought the Thunder were in a really bad spot after that 2-game sweep of Golden State, having to go to Portland. I thought it was not a good spot for the Thunder, laying all those points on the road. And what happened? I lost the game by 40 points or something, or not 40 given the spread being involved there, but even so, Portland lost the game by more than 40 points. They were down by almost 50 near the end there. Nobody's going to want Portland with the way that they've looked. They've lost 7 games in a row, culminating in that game just getting absolutely annihilated. But I think when you get completely destroyed like that, like, you have pride, man. Like, some people are saying they're tanking this early in the season. I think it's too early for that. You want to get a good draft pick, but the NBA has a draft lottery too, which mitigates the tanking, because if you're the worst team, you're certainly not guaranteed the first draft pick. There's the lottery, so you're only guaranteed to be the most likely to get the first draft pick, but it's still not that likely that you'll get it. So I don't see that being the case. I think Portland is playing for pride still. You just got absolutely blown out, embarrassed on your home floor. It's going to be good to get out of home when you've been playing that poorly and you had that bad a home game. The recipe, the cure for that is to go on the road. And that's what they're doing here. They're going to Phoenix. Phoenix is returning home out of elevation after they beat the Timberwolves at home. And then they went to Utah into elevation and swept Utah in a back-to-back there. Both games on the road. Both games were close. And the second game, I think, went double overtime or something like that. So it is not a good spot for the Phoenix Suns, in my opinion. I think they have a big game next, too. Yeah, they have Golden State next. So I think it's a fairly strong lean, to be honest, to be taking Portland, getting so many points there, 13. I just can't quite get there. I hesitate to take underdogs that are like that significant as an underdog, because it's like it becomes, you get into like mismatch territory and it's a little bit tough, but the situation does dictate it. It is there. Phoenix, one day off, returning from that 3-game stretch where they beat the Timberwolves and then went on the road and beat Utah twice in a row, including going into double overtime, and had to put up max efforts to win both of those games. And they have Golden State up next. The only way to look there would be to take Portland with all those points, coming off a really embarrassing loss for them, and they're getting out of home to play that game. So that's the way I would look in that game. Let's finish it up. We'll go to the game that I'm actually playing, which is going to be on the Toronto Raptors. And I took +2 in this one. The Magic look like they're slipping from 2.5 down to 1.5 at home, even though they have 93% of the cash on them, it looks like, but 52% of the tickets. I'm not sure if I buy that cash discrepancy, because the line is moving down on the Magic, which I think is in agreement with me here. I think this is a bad spot for the Magic. Not only do I think it's a bad spot, but I think this line looks like a trap, because the line is telling you the Magic aren't even getting a full home court advantage here. So the odds makers are telling you Toronto is actually the better of these two teams still. Even though if you look at the records, Orlando's 8-5. They're sitting half game out of first place in their division, right behind Miami. They're 8-5, and Toronto is 6-7. So people are going to look at this and think, how could that be the case? Well, Toronto, I think, could certainly be the better team. Toronto has played the tougher schedule so far. They've played the 76ers. They've played the Celtics twice. 76ers twice, actually, and Celtics twice. And I think they lost all 4 of those games. They also lost to the Bucks. They're in a tougher division with the 76ers and the Knicks and the Celtics and Brooklyn all in their division. So they're actually in last place in their division. But again, they've faced a much tougher opponent so far than Orlando has. Orlando did beat Milwaukee this season so far, but they haven't played any of those other Eastern Conference teams so far that are those really good Eastern Conference teams. So that factors into this. Toronto is actually still the better team. They've had the tougher schedule. And what are we looking at situationally as well? So because Toronto is actually the better team and they face the tougher schedule, but they have the worst record and they're in last place in their division and Orlando's almost in first place in theirs, people are going to look at that record discrepancy and think, how could the Magic be at home, basically getting in line to just win the game, not even getting home court advantage. Like, that's got to be value there, right? No, I think it's suspicious looking, and the odds makers are telling you, like I said, by lining the game there, that Toronto, even though it doesn't appear that way, are actually the better team. And this is a spot where I think you can take advantage of it. Get Toronto as the 2-point underdog like I did here. Orlando is coming back from a 4-game road trip with only 1 game off, although they didn't go that far. They went up to Brooklyn and then out to the Midwest, kind of, and played Chicago twice and Indiana, won all 3 of those games there. Now they come back home. They face Toronto, who's a team with a losing record, and then they have Denver tomorrow and then Boston on Friday. So it is possible they might overlook Toronto. Toronto's not a team that people have been paying that much attention to here, even though they've been a playoff team in some recent years. I don't think they were last year. They got a sub 500 record. It's a case where you might not be fully focused, in a return home with only 1 day off. You got those return home distractions coming into play here. You might not be totally focused on a Toronto team, especially when you have bigger teams coming into your arena the next 2 games, including tomorrow with Denver, the returning champs, and Boston, both coming to your home there, your house. Orlando, yeah, this is a spot where they might not be fully focused. They might be a little bit distracted. Toronto, I think, is in the better situation. They are coming off of a win. It was a blowout win, but a blowout win, but it was against Detroit. So I think people are not going to pay that much attention to it. But I think it was a bad spot that Toronto was in that game. They were coming off losing to Milwaukee, although they lost by double digits. Then they played Boston really close at home and played them to within 3 and covered the number at home. That was a big game against Boston. They just fell short. So I thought after that it was going to be tough for them to get off the mat and play again, but they showed up and they really handled Detroit. They blew them out in a spot that I thought was bad. So that shows me this team can come focused and they can have a lot of resolve in a game where I think they're in a bad spot. So that was the case there. They destroyed Detroit, so I think that was good. It's like a momentum breaker where they broke that momentum, the losing momentum that they had with those 2 losses. Now they can use that Detroit game as kind of a stepping stone to start some positive momentum while you're going out on the road. Now you get Orlando. You don't really have any important games coming up, really. Not many important games. Indiana up next. That's the way I look at it. I like it. Toronto +2 for all those reasons. That's the one play that I have on the board today. Hopefully we get it, man. Keep the streak going. It's only 1 play, so it's got to get there to do it. Peace.